Bible. Today we will see how the time of the judges ended among the Israelites. The last of the judges, 1 Samuel chapters 6 and 7. We have already heard of the little boy Samuel, whom his mother gave to God to serve him in the tabernacle at Shiloh. We have heard too of how God spoke to him there. Samuel was prophet in Israel at a time when people had turned away from God to worship pagan gods. The Philistines were overjoyed because they had taken the ark. They rushed it back to one of their great cities, Ashdod, and set it up alongside their great idol Dagon in his temple. But when they came into the temple the next morning, the idol was lying on its face on the ground. Very carefully they set the idol up again, but the next morning they found that it had fallen down again. But this time the head and both hands had broken off. A worse thing happened too. The people of Ashdod and all around were afflicted with a terrible disease which brought up painful boils on them. The Philistines were sure that all this had happened because they had taken away the ark from the Israelites. So they decided that it should be moved to the city of Gath. But that brought terrible hardship to the people of Gath too. When the ark was sent on from Gath to Ekron, the sickness came on them too. For 7 whole months, the Philistines suffered because they kept the ark, and in the end they decided to send it back. They loaded it onto a newly made cart with 2 cows harnessed in front. On the cart with the ark, they placed offerings of gold to be a sacrifice to the God of Israel. No men led the cows, but as soon as they were let go, they pulled the cart away in the direction of the hills where the Israelites lived, right into the valley of Beth-Shemesh, where some of the people were harvesting wheat. When they saw what was on the cart, these people were glad. Some of them who were Levites immediately built an altar, and using the wood of the cart to make the fire, they offered up the 2 cows to God as their sacrifice of thanksgiving. But some of the people of Beth-Shemesh were more inquisitive than they ought to have been. They wanted to see what was inside the ark, so they opened it, although they knew this was wrong. The result was that God sent a great plague on them, and a very large number died. When that happened, the people who were left were afraid, and they sent a message to the inhabitants of Kiriath Jearim, asking them to come and fetch the ark away. This was done, and for 20 years that was where the ark remained, in the house of Abinadab. Now, when Eli died, Samuel was still too young to judge over Israel. But after a few years, when the ark had been brought to Kiriath Jearim, Samuel began to tell the Israelites what they must do if they wanted to overcome the Philistines. You see, the Philistines were still raiding their villages and stealing their crops and making life very unhappy for the Israelites. Samuel told them they must stop worshipping the false pagan gods of the Canaanites and destroy their ugly idols and turn back to the Lord, the only true God. When they did that, he would help them to drive out the Philistines. The Israelites listened to what Samuel said, and on a certain day, many of them gathered at a place called Mizpah to fast and to pray that God would deliver them. There Samuel was appointed judge over the nation, and there they all promised to serve God faithfully. When the Philistines heard of this large gathering, they called together their armies and the warlords and led them up to attack Israel. The Israelites were afraid. They had been defeated so many times. However, Samuel told them not to be afraid, but to keep praying to God to help them. He then brought a special sacrifice of a lamb to God, and when he prayed for the people, the Lord heard him. While the service went on, the Philistine armies came closer and closer. But then something amazing happened. A terrible storm broke over the Philistine soldiers. God's voice thundered until the soldiers who still could broke ranks and ran. Then the Israelites moved in to attack. Strangely, the great victory was won at a place called Abinadab, the very place where the Israelites had been defeated by the Philistines over 20 years earlier. Before long, the Israelites were able to take back all the cities the Philistines had captured from them, from Ekron right up to Gath. From then on, during all the time that Samuel was judge over Israel, the Philistines were not able to trouble them again. Samuel went on a circuit from Bethel to Gilgal to Mizpah, judging Israel. Samuel set up his home in Ramah, and from Ramah he went out from town to town to judge and to settle all the disputes between the people. Samuel built an altar in Ramah to the Lord and continued to worship the Lord there.